Hello, good morning to America, good afternoon to EU, or even good evening. Greetings from Belgrade. My name is Maja Piscevic and I'm a senior fellow with the Atlantic Council. And I have a very great pleasure today to talk to Commissioner Olivér Várhelyi, EU Commissioner for Neighbourhood and Enlargement, in charge of overseeing the accession process of prospective new member states and relations with those bordering the European Union. So as a Serb national, I would like to start from the Western Balkans because this is a matter of my greatest concern, but let's still begin with the EU neighborhood. As we move out of the pandemic, which we hope is happening right now, I hope so. What are your first three priorities, Commissioner, for your time as Commissioner for the Neighborhood, and where do you see the greatest potential for transatlantic cooperation with the United States?
Well, I hope we were that far ahead in getting out of the crisis. I think that we're still quite a bit to do in it. So now priority should be to bring the vaccines to the neighborhood. We started with the Western Balkans. Now we should be able to bring also to our Eastern partners. Then to design together the economic recovery, because as you have seen all around our neighborhood, the economic impact is at least as devastating as the health impact this crisis had. And of course, looking ahead, we need a strong US presence and a transatlantic cooperation on not only cooperating, but also maybe amplifying the support that we're giving and the impact we're making by complementing much more what we do in our neighborhoods.
You have traveled to North Africa extensively, and the region is of crucial importance to the EU, not just in terms of migration flows. I'd like to ask you, what keeps you up at night about this part of the EU neighborhood, and what makes you optimistic?
What we have seen with the COVID crisis was an extreme vulnerability of the economies and the societies of the southern neighborhood. So Northern Africa. And we have seen how little support they have received from elsewhere. So for us, it was a tremendous job to bring the help as quickly as possible. Not only when it came to addressing the health issues at hand, but also the economic ones. These countries are facing severe social and economic difficulties because their economies are not diverse enough, they're not modern enough, and they are not capable of delivering growth and jobs for the people. We have also seen before the pandemic how strongly the region can be destabilized by the phenomenon of illegal migration. It has put the region in security challenge. It has also created internal political instability. But I was very happy to see that nowadays we are thinking the same way. Europe is much needed in the south for redesigning the economy and helping with the social reforms, but also that the region is now open to address the common challenge, which is fighting illegal migration, smugglers, organized crime, and terrorism.
Okay, thank you for this. I would like now to move to the other part of your neighborhood, to Ukraine. And given the recent rise in tensions between Russia and Ukraine, with whom the European Union has an association agreement, how do you propose moving forward with the EU's relationship with Ukraine? And what are your priorities with the Eastern Partnership countries, and how much coordination with the United States currently exists on policy level in this region?
First of all, when it comes to the security and integrity of Ukraine, we'll continue to stand by Ukraine, no matter what. And no matter what history will bring, we will continue to help them, support them, and help them to resist any pressure coming from Russia. You may have seen that we have been engaging financially even more to help Ukraine in bringing forward the reforms. And that would be the second big challenge the country has to face, which is to speed up the delivery on the necessary reforms that are related to the rule of law, fighting corruption and organized crime. And what we have seen, which is a common phenomenon, unfortunately, in the region, is that because of the lack of resilient economies, the region is vulnerable and prone to pressures coming from its biggest neighbor. Therefore, we are engaging with our Eastern partners, not only to continue the 20 deliverables for 2020, but also to front load and design together a modern new economy that is based on a Green Deal, that is based on digital transformation, but which also brings speedier integration into our economies. That means connectivity, that means creating an investors climate, and that means, of course, creating new opportunities for the economy to create growth and jobs. Moreover, we have seen that the region is reaching out to us, at least 3 partner countries in the region, to engage more with us. We are ready to do that. We are engaging with everybody deeper and more who is interested. And I would also like to underline the fact that we still have quite an untapped potential in the DCFTA agreements with Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. As you may have recall, 70% of the EU acquis could be transposed in these countries under these agreements. And we encourage colleagues there and our friends there to speed that up. And that will bring immediate benefits for them. But as I told you, we are ready to engage in practical terms as well, like cooperating in roaming, to do away with roaming charges, cooperate with them in linking up their electricity grids with Europe, and so on. And I could go on, but there's quite a bit to be done, and you will see us putting a very meaningful plan, economic and investment plan, on the table for that region as well, coming up later on this summer.
Thank you. Relations with Turkey. They have reached a low point recently, both with the EU and individual member states. How do you see the path forward for the EU's relationship with Turkey?
It's a complex relation. Turkey is a strategic NATO ally, the biggest NATO ally outside the European Union in Europe. And we also see Turkey as a major actor when it comes to the region where it is. However, our relations have not been ideal, to put it mildly. On the contrary, we have seen a major escalation in our relations. We're very happy to see now the openness and the engagement from the Turkish side to de-escalate. But it cannot be just a one-off. It cannot be just an intermediate attempt to de-escalate. It has to be well-footed, mid-term, long-term. And we are ready to consider that. But of course, there are quite a number of issues we need to address. And this is what we're working on.
Thank you. Now let's move to the other part of your portfolio, the enlargement. And before I ask you about the EU perspective for the Balkans, I'd just like to ask you briefly about one statement that you gave yesterday, I think, to Euronews that raised a lot of attention. As you said that due to unresolved issues between North Macedonia and Bulgaria, Albania might begin accession talks without North Macedonia. When asked if decoupling was an option, you replied, yes, that might be an option. Is this the position of the EU Commission or just, your personal view?
Well, I wasn't asked on a personal basis, but as a commissioner. And as a commissioner, this is what I think. And as a commissioner, I represent the point of view of the Commission. But let's go through where we are with this. First of all, point number one is that we're working on getting a solution for both North Macedonia and Albania, because we are still convinced that both of them have met all the conditions to have the first IGCs. And this is what we're working on. We still have some time left. The Portuguese presidency would like to put this issue back on the table in June, which we welcome, because we think that we have to move on. And the enlargement process cannot be hijacked by just a bilateral issue. Second, the enlargement process has always been and should always be based on merit. Now, if we want to be fair, Albania has equally met the conditions as North Macedonia. I do recall at the time when we had this discussion whether to decouple and move forward with North Macedonia and leave Albania behind, hearing this argument from the opposite angle. The point I'm making is that we have to have a solution. But if we end up in June in a situation that we have no solution for the bilateral issue between Bulgaria and North Macedonia that blocks the opening of the first IGC, we will have to, and this question will come inevitably, it's not because I put it on the table, but this will come, that we will need to reflect on the question whether or not decouple. And this question is coming. This is the only thing I made very clear.
Thank you. In your recent address at the workshop of Italy's Chamber of Deputies, I think you said, let me be clear, the European Union is the future for the Western Balkans. There is no doubt about that. As a Serb national, I'm really excited and pleased to hear your words of optimism for the Balkans. At the same time, I hold a similar level of confidence in the EU perspective here in the Balkans. So what is your message to the skeptics or those who are fatigued, both in the EU and in the Balkans?
Well, historic processes take time. So one should not think that these kind of decisions can be made overnight. But if you look back, let's say 20 years ago, and you look now where the Balkans is, we have come already a long way. Unfortunately, we missed out quite a number of years with the previous commission. And now we're working on to recover it. What I see is that it is still the European Union, which is the most important partner for these regions. Look at the trade flows, look at the level of economic integration into our economies. Look at the investment rate from our companies in the region. And I still tend to believe in the polls that are made in the Western Balkans, which tells us that well over the majority of the public opinion in the whole of the Western Balkans are for EU membership. So I would argue with all those who think that we are losing ground in the Western Balkans. But this is also a difficult process with a lot of conditions that need to be met, because the EU is the role model. Now, the EU as a role model is, of course, a complex one, and it takes time until the Western Balkans is able to implement all the policies and conditions that we have. And still, in this region as well, the biggest challenge is the big difference in terms of development gap between the Balkans and Europe. If we want to convince our public, the European public, about membership of the Western Balkans, we need to help the Western Balkans to catch up with us much faster, much stronger. And this is why we've put on the table a new methodology to renew the enlargement process. This is why we have put on the table an economic and investment plan that will speed up the reforms and will speed up the closing of the economic gap of over 30 billion euros. So we are putting everything we got to the Western Balkans to make it happen. And coming back again to North Macedonia, we now need to find a solution, and we will push for a solution. And you know, when the EU is pushing for a solution, it means that we don't give up.
Thank you. We just received the question, and you can answer briefly if you can. Does the Commissioner have a specific timeline for any substantial progress on enlargement in the region?
Well, as you know, if you really want to have a useless discussion, then let's talk about the timeline when it comes to enlargement. I do remember as a Hungarian when we were discussing, is there a target date, yes or no, for the enlargement? Enlargement is not a question of target dates. Enlargement is the question of readiness, preparedness for membership. I myself made a personal commitment, and that is not a deadline, not a timeline. It bounds only me, which is that I want to work so that we have at least one of the Western Balkan partners ready to join the European Union by the end of my mandate in this commission. So basically, end of October 2024.
I really hope your dream comes true, because that's our dream as well. I'm talking about Serbia, but any country, if it goes to the EU, it will pull the rest with it. I hope so. One of the main...
I do agree with you.
Thank you. One of the main objectives of this forum is to advance a conversation on how the EU and the US can cooperate more closely on jointly faced challenges, as you know. So how do you see the US playing a constructive role in EU-led negotiations between Belgrade and Pristina?
As I said in the previous answer, for me, most important is complementarity. As you know, the EU has been entrusted by the UN General Assembly to run or lead the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. We have a special representative who is working on this tirelessly, and I try to help his work by putting all the enabling conditions in place for the dialogue to succeed. But we need the US there. The US has a very important political role to play. Our partners in the Western Balkans consider the US to be a very important point of reference. And this is why we need to cooperate with the US, and this is why we have to work together with the US to make it happen. I'm quite hopeful, having talked to the US colleagues several times, and we're constantly in contact, that we can boost the hope of success through our cooperation. For instance, the Washington Agreement, I find it an important step, but it is only an enabling step. The main driver for any successful dialogue should be the EU-led Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. And of course, we can continue talking about Bosnia and Herzegovina, where the US is also having a very important role to play, and there as well we want to cooperate. we appreciate very much the fact that now we have 3 countries in the Western Balkans being member of NATO. That couldn't have happened with the very serious engagement and continued engagement of the US. So I think we have quite a bit to work together on, quite a bit to provide in terms of future.
So expanding a little bit on transatlantic cooperation, in your area of responsibility and given all the themes that we've explored, what would be your 2 or 3 top priorities for joint US-EU engagement and cooperation that you would like to tackle with your colleagues in the new US administration?
Well, I just said 2. Very efficient dialogue in Kosovo, Bosnia and Herzegovina and its constitutional reform coming up hopefully this year. And then we also have, of course, the Middle East peace process, where we should cooperate very closely. So I would say these 3, absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. And now I just wanted also to ask one question about the Belarus, which with the crisis, which following the elections, which seems to have disappeared from the headlines, but the situation continues to be volatile and democratic forces are under severe pressure. How can the EU support the process of peaceful democratic transition, in your opinion, in Belarus?
This is a very difficult issue because it seems that the possibilities for the opposition to succeed are closing. However, we stand ready to support the civil society organizations, which we continue to do. We stand ready to support the free media so that people at least get to know what is really happening in the country. And as we have been telling, we are ready to work with a democratic Belarus, but that would require having new presidential elections and having a revised constitution that ensures the checks and balances. This is not the case, unfortunately. So we try to help with everything we got, the civil society and the media.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Várhelyi, for this fascinating discussion. And with this, I would like to turn it over to a spotlight from Federica Mogherini. Thank you so much again.